Morning, Adam. Can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Okay, but I can't hear you.
You can't hear me at all?
Let's unmute the TV. No, I think try talking, Adam.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
All right, awesome. Great. Okay, and we're recording, it looks like. So I don't know if you need to. Do you feel more comfortable recording on your?
It automatically records the cloud.
Perfect. Okay. So good morning, everyone. Calling to order the Council of Economic Advisors meeting Friday, August 8th, 8 a.m. bright early, and we are here in hybrid format, town hall and online. So we'll just do a quick roll call of attendance. So if we can just go around the room.
Mike Wilcox, the Bullfinch Companies.
Thank you.
Lisa Elcock with the chamber.
Dina Krieger, Needham, Massachusetts.
Amy Hilton, town staff.
Andrew Lutsenenko, resident.
Heidi Frail, Select Board.
Jacob Shapiro, resident.
Schwab Reza, business owner, Needham downtown.
Thank you.
Bill Mahoney, resident.
Thanks, Bill. And then online we have Adam Block.
Adam Block, with the planning board.
Excellent. Adam Meixner.
Adam Meixner, 128 CRE.
Thank you. And Biren Patel.
Brand Needham resident.
Super. Good to see everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm actually really impressed that we got so many people here today because it's, you know, one of the last Fridays of the summer. And so anyway, I know we have a bunch of folks who are away and couldn't make it, but I appreciate everyone who's here. Thank you very much. So we're going to start off with approval of our minutes from not our last session, but the session a couple of meetings ago. Let's see, the minutes for precisely at May 9th, which was when we had Karis Lustig in to talk with us about the Envision plan, which has changed considerably from that time, but nonetheless.
Madam
Has
Chair?
everyone had a chance to read the minutes?
Yes.
Comments?
Chair, I move passage of the minutes of May 9th.
Excellent. Do we have a second? Thank you. And I think since we're in a hybrid meeting, we do actually have to have a roll call. So we'll just go around the horn again.
Approved.
If we weren't here, do we still have a vote?
You can
Simply
approve,
read them
but you
and
can
they were
also
fine.
abstain if that
Okay.
makes you.
No, approve, they look okay to me.
Approve. Okay, and I approve.
Stay.
Okay,
Approve.
approve. And then Biren,
Approve.
Adam Meixner,
Approve.
Adam Block.
Aye.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so one of the things that we're gonna try to do moving forward, both in our agendas and then hopefully on the website eventually for folks, is to just do a little recap of each meeting, because one of the things that I think we as a town have been struggling with is accessibility of our information. All of the information is there, it's available, but there's a difference between available and accessible. And so here we have just a little recap of what the events of our last meeting were, so people don't have to read through all of the minutes to get there. So we introduced our new members as last was the first time that a lot of you have joined. And then we had a big discussion about what the CEA should really be taking on, what we should be doing. And I think one of those proposed activities is one that we want to talk about today, but there are others. And then we wanted to review the previously compiled CEA materials, and I think we sent most of that stuff out. So I just want to open the floor and see if anyone wanted to talk about, you know, the materials that were sent out, if you had any thoughts, takeaways from those, or just, you know, it's like a background, but a lot of it was a little bit dated. So.
Sure, yeah, I took a look through actually most of the material. It was definitely helpful. There was one thing actually in that, I think it was maybe the Babson report that just had the scorecard. I know you had referenced it last week. I think that's the type of thing that it'd be great to kind of pull that data forward to see where we are, to understand kind of where we need to dig in, like our permits, where they need to be, or, you know, valuations, just in terms of where things stand. And I think that even if we are gonna do a study and hire a consultant, I think that is some data that we could probably get with, maybe without a consultant. Just to kind of get an idea of where we should focus.
Okay, so tell me more about, what do you mean with permits and evaluation?
Are you familiar with the scorecard that was in there? Yeah, so it had basically different elements of the town and basically saying, hey, how are we doing from average income, average housing value, how many permit starts have been applied for in a given year? How has that progressed over time? Just to basically get a portrait or a snapshot of what's happening from an economic
Oh,
perspective
yeah,
in town.
sure, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think that would have to be the basis of any
Yeah.
economic development report, kind of where are we starting from? And probably a progression, like where have we been, so absolutely. Anyone else?
I just found it fascinating to read, especially the mixed use 128 stuff. Sounds really
Mm.
cool. What could be done? Never even thought about that area. But what can be done over there? And then it was interesting to read the first one, I think, was at 2009. And not a criticism at all, but just interesting to see where we are and things that they're talking about in there are a lot of the things that we hear talked about, and it'd be great to realize some of that stuff, but it's amazing how some things really do change and other things don't, so it's just really in 2009 thinking, wow, they were talking about that in 2009, I hear that
Yeah.
today too, so I found it all really interesting just from a history perspective and to kind of tie a lot of things together, and it made me realize after going through all these things that, you keep talking about maybe sort of this master plan. Forget what you call it, a master something for Needham as a whole, and all of these things could easily sort of be sections of it or rounded up to it. So, yeah, I enjoyed actually reading through the stuff.
Yeah, so just to, for my part, be clear, I have talked, I don't think here, but I have talked a little bit about doing a master plan for Needham, that's like incorporating kind of all of the studies that exist, parking and traffic development and all kinds of social stuff as well. I think it's the position of the town at the moment that we have a lot of that, and really the effort that would be needed is to sort of reconcile it and put it together, but that also like to do a master plan as people, as municipalities recognize that is a humongous undertaking that, could, in the doing could span a number of years and then theoretically a few years, but I think what we've come to consensus on is that we don't really need a master plan because we have so many of the elements that would go into it. What we need to do is find a way to start reconciling ourselves rather than starting a new process. So sort of what you were talking about, we have a lot of this information, just making sure that it's up to date and then that we can move forward with it. I think making what we have actionable is kind of where we're headed with looking at our data. Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, as I'm listening to you in my own business, and I see this from a lot of other people, getting reports and studies are always great because you feel like, okay, now it's all together. I have a place to start from. And after a few years, when I first started my business and getting these reports, my conversation with these people afterwards would be like, I really want something that I can put in action, not that I open up my door and I see this report from 5 years ago and never did anything and we paid for the report. So we have all that stuff, and action always seems to be the hardest thing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I see Matt Talkoff online. Hey, and I see you have your hand up. How you doing?
I'm good. I was just gonna let you know, I was here before. I just couldn't, for some reason, I don't think you guys could hear me or see me, so.
Oh, okay. Thank you. We'll
Yeah,
make
thank
sure to record you. Nice to
Yep.
see you, Matt.
Thank you. Nice to see you all.
Sorry, Matt, did you have a comment or no?
No, it was just that, because you
Just
couldn't
that.
hear me. No, and I'm happy to answer. I mean, I was around back in the last century and happy to answer any questions that from my memory of some of those master plans of the mixed use. I'm sorry, of the, the the Charles Street and that area that Dina was talking about.
Awesome. Thank you. Hey,
Yeah.
Adam Block, you have your hand up?
Yeah, Thanks. So I think we actually have a statutory obligation every 5 years to publish a master plan. And, when I joined the planning board, some years ago, I was effectively told we have it. It's just in these, like you're saying, disparate reports and studies from different areas about different things. And it is a significant effort to consolidate it. And yet I think that the reward of actually doing that work to consolidate it, which may be a good thing to bring in a consultant on to help with that, but is that we're actually planning in concert between, for instance, what the schools needs are, what public works needs are, what what the business community's needs are, what Parks and Rec needs are, the Department of Health. The whole point of it is to consolidate that information so that all departments understand how how to effectively manage growth. And but I've never seen us actually do that. And I think that we're experiencing, and a lot of residents are experiencing, some of the frustration, when transportation's not necessarily, communicated in a way when there's development happening, down the street from something, and Public Works doesn't, they understand what's happening, but maybe there's not consideration given for 5 years growth when we're dealing with a new school or changing a school, or there's economic development activity, like if Muzzy gets developed. So having some kind of consolidation, I think, would be beneficial for sure. Although I don't dismiss or deny that that's a really huge effort. I just think the town overall, for our ability to plan between departments, would actually be would be improved with that, which was the initial intent of the statute. The economic scorecard, I think, having updated economic data to understand the performance of our local economy, I think is helpful. Amy and I worked really hard, with Daphne and with the students from Babson to try and put that together. And the CEA did a great job at trying to give, at coming up with the foundation and the direction. And having that as an ongoing economic tool, I think, could also benefit, the town, and certainly our work, and shape and give real-time information to the select board about what what the status of our economy is, where the weaknesses are, where the opportunities are. And I look forward to chatting a little later this morning about some of the someone mentioned about mixed use 128, and have a bit of an update there when we're at that stage in the agenda.
Great. Thanks, Anna. So the select board held its goal setting meeting. And and there were a number of items that were discussed that were some were referred to the Council of Economic Advisors, including an economic development study. And then there were some that were sort of semi-referred or sort of discussed as potentially appropriate, or at least were are items that could be considered economic development that I would like us to look at. So while we talk about a master plan, I think the discussion of an economic development plan could be seen in the context of incorporating a lot of the elements from other plans and from other projects, but looking at them through a different lens. And I think that our goal, my goal anyway, I will speak for myself only, would be not only to assess kind of our current situation and make sure that we understand where we are, but to come away with kind of a roadmap or a to-do list, items that influence the town and that are easily executable by, maybe the work is done by this committee, but it's something that the select board finds it easy to say yes to. So I think I mentioned this in our last meeting, and if I didn't, one of the committees that I think did a really good job doing this was the Climate Action Plan Committee. They met to assess the problem, and then came up with an action plan that identified sort of the most impactful items that could be accomplished by the town, and ranked them and sort of put them into little packages of what exactly needed to be done to achieve those goals, how they could be executed by the town, what would be required, whether that's, to go through town meeting, or if it's something that the select board could change a policy for, et cetera, and explained what the impact would be, and then made it really easy for the town to just say yes and make it happen. And that plan has been really, really successful. It was a long process, and I think that this would maybe not be quite as long, but it would be kind of urgent. It's not going to be an easy lift. It's not going to happen in 2 months. So I just want to sort of talk through the items. Amy, did you have something? Pull it up. Okay, if you share on your screen. Okay. So we didn't send this out ahead because these are not officially designated to the council, but it's stuff that we want to talk about. We think that really makes some impact here.
And so to be clear, these are the goals for the select board, and we're going through them because some of these would be,
Relate to.
okay, so these are not, okay, so wow, so these are, okay, I just want to.
So maybe we could just go through and discuss them and talk about how, because I think we also need to be careful to bite off chunks that, are digestible. So establishing clear guidelines for public art proposals. I think that as this relates to this council, it's not a direct relationship, but I think making Needham a more attractive place that's sort of first of all, I think guidelines are extremely helpful whenever we talk about sort of regulating, I mean, in this case, public art, but you can imagine lots of scenarios where this would be applicable. Needham has a sign bylaw. Needham has a, when you have lots of different interests competing for eyeballs, that's what this is about. So what is art and how do we display it in what context? I think I'm not certain that this one feels,
I feel like this would be,
here for me.
I feel like this would be a case where there's other people in town that would come up with the guidelines, and then it might be something where we say we agree with them.
Well, this is another thing
Right.
that I think that,
We come in at the end.
Yeah.
This looks really, this makes a lot of sense. We stamp it, yes. Like,
yes, I think that that kind of role for this committee is important. I think the last thing that this committee weighed in on actually was MBTA communities. But prior to that, there had been, and maybe Adam can fill in the blanks here, but I think that we have weighed in on other initiatives by the town, and I think that can be a real a good,
Letters.
a good source of guidance for others in town. Adam, we definitely weighed in on MBTA communities, but what else?
We weighed in on 100 West Street, I believe, and we also weighed in on the fire department, the public safety
potential
construction. I don't think we weighed in before on other arts council projects, but if they go ahead and make a proposal and they want us to kind of take a look, at it from an economic development point of view, for sure, we could do that.
Yeah, I was gonna also say that the CEA also weighed in on the parking study,
Oh,
the
yes.
recommendations
Yes.
that came from the consultants, the CEA then set forth, identifying which priorities they felt as though should
Right.
rise to the top.
That's right.
Remember that. Thank you. So the next item, gather community data from Placer AI. So Placer AI, if you're not familiar, it's like it's a little creepy. It's a data tracking from cell phones So it's de-identified, they can't tell whose cell phone it is, but they can track people's movements within Needham and through Needham by use of your cell phone data. And so what that can tell us is like, you know, if someone comes to Needham, someone from outside of Needham is commuting through Needham, where do they stop? How long do they stop? If they're coming, if a resident is going to the ball fields for kids' game, do they go to lunch after? Or do they go straight home? Or where else? What kind of, you know, how many stops does one make on an errand trip? Are people going out for one errand and then returning home? Or are they making multiple stops? Or are they driving to a place and then walking around and then driving out?
Does it distinguish between residents and non-residents?
It does. Yes,
Pretty
it's-
cool
it is,
and
it is,
creepy.
it is a little creepy, but it is also very cool and can be very, very useful. And the town has a 1-year contract with Placer AI for this information, and we're just about to get a report of the data that's available. I mean, we have been using some of the data, but we're just about to get a sort of cumulative report and decide whether or not this is something that we want to continue. So I think that would be, I personally, although, you know, I totally acknowledge the creepy factor. This is data that's out there and available and that other entities will use. So I don't see any reason why we shouldn't take advantage of it as well. And then apply it, especially as we talk about, you know, a lot of change coming to some of these neighborhoods. You know, if 100 West is developed, or Boston Children's Hospital, you know, when they open, how do traffic patterns change? How do people's movements change? I think that's important information and something that we could definitely make use of.
Kind of a data nerd, so my first question is, do they typically use this as a way to project what's gonna happen in the future? Or is it more a tool to just, this is what's happening right now?
Well, I think what they can present is what's happening right now, but Amy, I'm sure knows
Yeah,
more
it
about
can
this.
also be used, so for example, let's say the data shows that there's a lot of people coming to Needham for one reason, but then leaving Needham to go elsewhere for another service or a type of business. That data could be used to help recruit potential businesses, saying the data is showing that after folks are coming to Needham, they are then leaving Needham to go to Newton for fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
It
Very
orig-
curious
it-
this- Sorry, please.
Sorry, it started, I think, in part predominantly for the commercial real estate industry, if I remember correctly. Adam may be able to correct me on that, and maybe Mike as well, to provide more insightful information that was otherwise available, that was kind of a bit stayed from other commercial real estate tools like LoopNet and CoStar, which are owned by the same company. So it was able to track, like Heidi was saying, or it is able to track kind of live information from, you know, from our phones to track traffic patterns, because that would obviously have an impact on landlords, their ability to rent space, the value of the space, and being able to have that information and see it in real time, and then compare it a year later to see how things move in the following year, you know, can provide some insightful guidance on, on how the town is effectively evolving.
Thanks, Adam. What were you gonna say?
No, I was gonna say something similar. It would be interesting to see like the patterns of how people visit establishments in town based on like relative location to parking, or to like what, if we were to do like something, an analysis like walkability.
Yeah.
Cause I think that's something I've thought about in the past of, you know, we've sort of, let's say 3 big lots, the Walgreens lot, the one, that's town, and then the CVS one, then, so we sort of have this ring, but the further out you go towards like the junction or like elsewhere, we may lose, or we may have some opportunity to like provide, I don't know, ways of getting to those types of stores and promoting those stores that may be helpful, using this data.
Yeah, and I think parking in particular is a really big issue. It's something that's listed here 3 times. And so while we have done a number of parking surveys and assessments. We have yet to really tailor our parking to the needs of our residents and the businesses. And so I think that this Placer AI info could play a role, but also on those 3 parking initiatives, all of which are kind of ready to go, but not, we don't actually have the resources to make them go just yet. The update of parking payment technologies was supposed to be launched this summer, but unfortunately the software integration has become an issue for us. And so we're still working on it. It's still on the way. It's just delayed somewhat.
Oh, can I add one more thing on the Placer AI thing?
Yeah.
So I won't speak to this specifically, hey, I want to see this data, but I think maybe what we could do as this committee is, I'm sure this data is going to be probably very rich. There's lots of information here. There's lots of different groups within Needham that will want to use it for different reasons. Maybe what we can do on this committee is basically come up with our main use cases, like what do we want to look at and why, and what would be helpful, and then prioritize that and share that with whoever's doing that analysis, so that we all feel good about the data that we're getting and we can use it for something.
Yes.
So quick question, is this data available for businesses and resident, or is just not shared?
It's just,
Just
well,
for-
actually, I mean, I think it's just the town. It's the
Just the
town who
town,
holds the
okay.
contract.
Got it.
It's, I don't know.
What department within town is this sort of coming under?
It's JP, right? Wasn't it?
It's under economic development presently.
Yeah, I would have to check in. It's gonna be able to be shared. I mean, the town makes public most of its resources,
Mhm.
but I need to check on.
It's just a policy matter if it is available or not, that's all.
Yeah, and what degree of detail is
Exactly, yeah.
available, yeah. So we'll have to, that is something that we can check on. Can we make that an item? But one of the other parking related issues that's here is to update our permit parking and parking regulations. So the town already has some contracts with private lot owners to provide permit parking at off hours and so on. And the question is whether rearranging our parking. So for example, not allowing employees at businesses to park at metered spots and making them park in permitted spaces, and how the contractual and monetary regulations would work there, so that those metered spaces or those public parking spaces would be mostly available to customers. So, you know, having lots that are potentially a little further away or off hours or what have you. And doing some work there to make sure that the distribution of parking spaces is appropriate for the business needs and the residents' needs. Including things like the 15-minute pickup parking, like, you know, food orders or even just takeout orders, things like that. Loading and unloading. I know we heard a lot about concerns about that during the vision process. And I think that is the case throughout town. It's not just a question of Needham Center. You know, the Avery Square area, especially if 100 West begins to be developed and there's construction there. I mean, you know, parking issues are always an issue. Just look at the TJ's.
There's an issue in the park too.
Yeah.
Trucks that come in and just use it, and Amy and I discussed it, and I spoke with one of the police officers who patrols the area. And they just basically leave trailers and rigs typically on 3rd Ave because it's close to the highway and they get in and off. And essentially it's because it's only a $15 fine that it's just like, oh, what the heck?
Yeah. Right.
And I would also add that with Children's Opening, I mean, if you drive around the park now, there's these huge garages, but nobody wants to park in them. Everyone parks on the street. And there's almost going to be, I think, also maybe as a side issue, a public safety issue, just because you've got a lot of these cars parked on the street, and then visibility and whatnot, it is going to be a little bit difficult. And I'm assuming, you know, very soon with that Children's Opening, there's going to be a lot more activity coming in just as a result of that big facility.
That's good information to have. I mean, I think that a lot of these, the parking studies and assessments that were done did include recommendations. And so it might be a thing for this group, because I mean, the truth is that the town is under-resourced to deal with all of these issues. I mean, there's only so many staff and so much time in the day. So if this committee were to choose to take on something like that, to review the recommendations that have been made and to make a recommendation to the select board, for example, to put in place some of those, I think that would be welcomed. We'd, I think that is a place where we could play a role.
Clarification, please. Parking, the perception or what I hear everywhere is there's never enough parking, but when I looked through the parking study, it appears that there is enough parking, it's just a distribution issue.
Yeah.
So is the town looking to increase parking or to better distribute it, or
Better
is that
distribute
all?
it.
Okay, that's what I
Yeah,
was
I mean,
trying
to start
get.
with, first of all, I mean, there have been suggestions that the town increase parking. I think what we need to do is make sure that what we have works as best it can before we move to, a costly addition of parking. So, parking is one of the most expensive ways to use land. So, if we are able to better distribute our parking, again, moving employees to permitted parking, maybe a little further away, but if they're staying there for a certain number of hours, that makes sense. And then to have the parking that is closer to the businesses be more active parking. So people who are actually shopping in those businesses, and so on. I think that would be a really good use of the resources the town has, and also good use of the committee's time.
I agree, parking absolutely falls under this committee. There's just no bigger impact probably on, an economic vitality picture in any Needham business district. I would say that I have lived in Needham for over 30 years, and yes, I get bummed. It's not a spot in front of UPS, but I can always find a spot.
Yeah.
And it might entail, I think the frustration comes from people not getting those spots right in the front, but I think you can always find. And then I think there's a huge misconception, and you probably know the real cost, or Adam, underground parking. It's really not a solution. It's so expensive. A lot of people feel like they should put underground parking in the common or somewhere. And is it now up to a spot for a developer to do an underground? Like,
I mean, we look more like above ground, like what they're building in the park, and that's like, I don't know, last I heard, like $20,000 a spot.
Right, so I just feel like there has to be some edge. It's whenever I hear about the underground, I'm just like, do they understand how much that costs? And so I think some of it's education, for sure. And better signage, I know, is one thing that's been brought up for.
And I think has been
15 years
attempted,
now.
but maybe we need even better.
There are a lot of options to park today to come to town hall.
I mean,
there's
this
free
committee has
parking and-
made recommendations and implemented signage improvement, but it's not enough.
So I would say absolutely this would get a star and moved up in terms of priority for this committee.
Adam, I see you have your hand.
Yeah, thanks. So for sure that parking is obviously an integral part of the work that that the CEA has done, and talking about policy and permitting practice. We have a room full of business owners and stakeholders in business in town, so it's certainly a useful discussion, an ongoing discussion. I just wanted to also update that the planning board has received funds to hire a consultant for to continue the parking study. Amy worked so hard with Stantec on the initial parking study, and now we're looking to expand it kind of townwide. That I believe, and I don't know if you have more of an update on this. I'll know next week at the planning board meeting, but maybe Heidi from the select board, you may have more information on this. That the RFP for consultants was supposed to go out in July, and in August we're supposed to hire the consultant. And then there'd be some workshops, one in October, one in February, and then there'd be a report in April from the consultant. That's how I think Lee and the current chair, Artie Crocker, are, have it mapped out. I don't know where they are in the process. I'll have an update next week. But if there's a report from the consultant in April, there's no way that change could be made for this coming May. It would potentially be October 2026 for a for parking bylaw revision. And that would modify the parking standards throughout our different zoning districts within the town. But that's one part of it. It's an important part of it, and the CEA should probably participate in a meaningful way in kind of understanding that. And then also, to address issues of, parking policy, I think is also a lively discussion, for the group.
Adam, how's the scope of this new parking study different than the previous one?
I haven't seen the scope, but from what we were talking about it and as a board, I think it's effectively an extension of what Stantec did, but kind of broader town-wide.
I believe it has a lot to do with parking minimum requirements for new developers, new developments, new businesses.
Okay.
That was part of it, but it was.
So it's not like, do we have enough spaces? It's how do we move forward development and accommodate parking that would be required?
That is my understanding.
Okay. Okay, well, that's interesting. You recall that the MBTA Communities Act lowered the parking minimum for all of the plan areas to 1 spot minimum. From 1.5. Most of our businesses apply for parking waivers, actually.
Sorry, just one
Yeah.
last thought about this. In addition to sort of understanding the distribution, I'd be really curious to think about how we think about like connectivity within sort of our business zones, in addition to the parking. So using the center for an example, I think there's maybe some ways we can encourage continued like foot traffic or like persistence in the area versus like errand and then leave. I think we, from like just like a planning perspective, to sort of go from one side to the other, there's like those 4 major crosswalks, but if you go more towards St. Joe's, you sort of have to go around this big ring. So just, it doesn't need to be a focus, but I think it'd be curious. It's very early, no coffee today. It would be a really interesting impact to see what would happen if we could encourage more like crosswalks or ways so people could like naturally flow through the spaces and visit multiple shops versus saying, well, I'm here, now I gotta cross all the way to this side of the street. And to do that, I have to grab my car and drive around. Just sort of a thought, but I think the more persistency we can have in the area, that will sort of add the other benefits of a community feel of, oh, I'm here, now I can visit this shop, I've always wanted to go in, sort of thought process.
Yeah. I think it might be helpful for us to get a better understanding of how the town's current permit program works and who we have, like where we have permitted locations, so that we can think about, what more do we need? And also to look at the recommendations from the existing parking studies to see where we might be able to play a role.
I'll just add to that, Pat, I was just mentioning about the St. Joe's walking around town. If you're at St. Joe's and for example, you want to go to French Press, you actually there's no diagonal cross there. You actually have to come down, go across, or like take 2 trips across, especially if you're with a small kid who can't walk very fast. So it's just kind of like, this area that is just north of, I guess, French Press and those stores, it's kind of like a dead zone between there and that Highland sector that has Subway and all the other stores.
Yeah, I agree.
There's a lot of breaks. A lot of it's the nature of the bit, like funeral homes are so dormant during that gas station. It's a huge triangle. Like I would never want to walk through that gas station. With cars coming in and out. So part of it is
Yes.
the types of businesses.
I would also, I would also know, like going down that sector, like as you get closer to the high school, we have that one crosswalk that's sort of across the medical shop. But then like that gap between that and where the library is, people cross there anyway. So like maybe that's an additional thing where we can sort of like traffic slows down, but if there's like additional crossings, allows people to go.
Yeah.
That may be beyond the scope of what we're talking about in
Well,
parking.
no, I
but
mean, I
it's-
think the idea of keeping people in a spot to go to multiple businesses is a really good one and something that we should be looking at and for each of these areas. I think though that there are a lot of regulations regarding crosswalks in particular and how the infrastructure can be placed. So maybe that's something that we need to get a sort of a fundamental understanding of. That good, because I agree, we want to address.
And I can see us like saying half one of our meetings can just be parking. I think if we really come up with which ones of these make the most sense, then we actually pick which ones we're gonna focus on to keep the momentum going, because it's just like a little bit at a meeting and another little, but I think we should just do a really deep dive and have all those tools you're talking about in front of us that we lay out.
I think the key
Let's
thing
figure
for
out
us
parking.
first, though, is to just prioritize.
Yes.
what we wanna work on, and so that's kind of what this discussion is. I think probably we'll need to do a prioritization survey of the membership, just to make sure that we're all
Yeah,
on
like
the same
that.
page and we have consensus.
When, you know, the Walgreens parking lot to me is central to the whole parking downtown. It provides what, probably 150 free parking spots every day. If the town doesn't control that, to me, the parking really gets substantially changed in this town. So if I was running this town, I'd go get an appraisal of that lot tomorrow and figure out how much it would be to buy it from the private equity firm that now owns it. So we can control that parking long term. Cause and that's gone. I don't know where I'm parking half the time. Anytime I'm going to the bank, I use Walgreens for everything.
Saw you walking it from there today.
I don't know where else to
I
park.
was like, I think he's on this, he's coming to the same committee.
I didn't know you could park there unless you were going to Walgreens.
That's, that's a really, that's a really,
150 parking spots and 5 people in Walgreens. All right, so.
that's a very smart idea
All that parking.
with,
It's shared by other buildings around there, though. I see it striped for the medical
Yeah,
office.
right.
Exactly.
Yeah, Bill McQuillan must have a portion of that, because that's that part of that medical practice.
I'm sure Billy
So-
has leased spaces from the owner of Walgreens for his medical, the medical.
All right, Adam?
I think that's a really smart, very specific idea. It's good information for us to have. You know, I would love to see some kind of public-private partnership there in particular, because we all envision, expansion of our residential capacity in the downtown and being able to develop that in some capacity that can create additional parking spaces would be a huge boon to the town. I think as part of conducting an appraisal, a title search would be helpful too, because there is ownership on the one hand, and there are some perhaps regulatory agreements between different parties or leases for that space, and having that information would also be valuable. But in particular, starting with the appraisal, could be plus, some of the other intelligence that our brokers and property owners have access to here, could be, beneficial and inform an approach to a public-private parking partnership.
Thank you. Okay, so just to move on, I want to just address one of these. Well, first of all, Envision is on hold, kind of being rejiggered, so.
I didn't mean that envision. I wasn't talking about envision.
No, I know.
She's
I
on
get
to
it.
the next
I get it. I'm just moving on. There's another listing here. I'm just addressing, but it's not addressing essentially, because right now there's nothing to say about it. And then this listing, evaluate ways to increase minority and women-owned businesses, which is this is actually something that the finance director, the deputy town manager, Davison, is working on. This is more of a policy thing, so he's going to be coming out with a recommendation shortly. So this is not actually something that we have to address. Although in our discussion of recruiting businesses, theoretically play a role, but I don't think it's a big one here. So I guess the last thing, and I know we don't have a ton of time left, but Amy and I did get started talking with talking about an economic development study, talking with MAPC to start. About what they can offer in particular. And looking at different types of studies, how detailed they might be, as sort of what we can afford and how much time would all of these things take. Amy had found a number of samples done by other towns that we might want to look at. I think for us right now, obviously they're starting with where are we and what has the change been in this 5 years. I think we have to determine how far back is really relevant given COVID and all that, and the sort of massive change in people's behavior since then, work from home, etc. And then moving on to determine what we would want to get out of an economic development plan. As I say, I would really like to see executable recommendations that make sense, and how this group could contribute to defining what those goals should be. So I'll just throw it out there. Does anyone have any thoughts, opinions? Amy, we haven't really narrowed down kind of where we're sourcing this, but I know you've been looking at sample RFPs from other towns.
Yes, I'm in the process of reaching out to economic development directors from other towns that have recently done these kinds of studies to see what they're, if they can share their RFPs. We don't need to reinvent the wheel here. We can basically take what they've done and tweak it to make it suit our needs. So that's in the process.
But this is something that would have to go through the town's budgeting process and get into our capital planning on a building, but it would be a significant expense, and so we have to plan for it. So it's not something, it seems, that we could just kind of make happen right away, which is good because we have time to define it, but bad because it'll take us longer to execute it. So we're working on defining what that sort of timeline looks like, and we'll be sharing that information out to you. So I think that it's absolutely still, frankly, probably one of our most important undertakings in this group. But I think this parking assessment could really fill in sort of a more immediate project to work on and impact to create. I'm still interested in looking at specific areas in town. I know that the industrial park, business park is a place where I know that you in particular have found that there are lots of deficiencies that we can work on correcting. I'm sure that others have them in their own areas of frequency. So originally with this group, we had talked about breaking into smaller groups to sort of work more intensively on those areas. Are people still interested in that? We've added a lot more people since we had those discussions. So I just want to kind of make sure that that's still of interest. You look
Kind of a listening tour.
No, I think it's great. Are you talking about specific, like Needham Heights, Needham Center, and looking to
each
see
one of
what's
these-
needed in those areas?
and each one of those areas is undergoing sort of, or about to undergo some pretty massive change. You know, on Chestnut Street, we know that there's some movement there. The hospital is looking at lots of options on Chestnut Street. In the center, obviously, there's Envision that's still ongoing, and sort of just aside from the infrastructure change there, I think there's a lot of angst. So there's that. There's the Highland Avenue TIP program, which is,
I don't think people.
I mean, that's many years down the road, but it's still something that we need to be thinking about. And that is the infrastructure improvements along Highland Ave, and that's basically from the highway down through the center. And then if Avery Square sees the renovation of 100 West, that's going to cause all kinds of kerfuffle there, not to mention potential change at the railroad crossing. And then the Highland Avenue TIP that I just mentioned also includes that west and, help me, by the senior center. Hillside intersection, so it kind of is like all through that area. That's gonna be a really big deal. For the moment, we're leaving Muzzy out because it's not really one of our, it's a single property, but then the business center as well. So with Boston Children's moving in, it's gonna be a lot of change, or a lot of potential change in a lot of these areas. So having a subset of this group kind of look at and think about what those areas might need.
Any idea about children's opening dates? Do we know when? they're-
February, like
February
January,
of
February
26, yeah.
2026.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, they
They're
had
giving
said the end
tours,
of the
right?
year, but
Mm.
yeah, I'm sure it'll go over.
Is that area doing well? Because, I mean, comparative to obviously much better than downtown Boston, I'm guessing, but is it?
It has issues, I mean,
Is it better than? It just seems like some good niche, like Shotdinger and the hospital. It seems like and I thought that TripAdvisor subspace is all released. So it seems, is that just my vision or is that?
no, that's true, they had, and Adam can join in, but they had a kind of a fire sale just to move their space, so they kind of undercut the market. We lost some tenants to them at the TripAdvisor and the same at the PTC complex. And just one of the issues that I have is just looking at the zoning there that allows us to have different uses that are now either prohibited or special permit, typically on the medical side, that would give us just the ability to have a more broader reach to tenants that we can't address right now, so.
Is the zoning different on Highland Ave with that 60,000? Is it medical space next to?
Yeah, we're looking at it at Muzzy too, that's different. This was the park specific to the TripAdvisor
So the
zone.
zoning is different up there than the park. Oh, interesting.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say for what you were saying, Heidi, for going out to all these different areas, like, can we talk a little about like what are the goals of the process behind that? Like, is it, hey, just go out, talk to a number of businesses, come back to this group with a report on like what's needed, what are they thinking about in all these different areas, and we aggregate it and put it together, and so we understand kind of the needs of the different areas in town?
Well, I think that's totally legitimate. I actually would love to see, though, an assessment of what's there and what do we think could bolster the area. I think I would love to see this group get involved in business recruiting to make Needham sort of more marketable and known and draw businesses to this area. I think we have a lot to offer, and we have a lot of, I think we discussed last meeting, we have a lot of sort of core competencies. Obviously, restaurants in our downtown, but I think we have a lot of medical businesses here, and when you portray Needham in that way, it can help draw more businesses. And I think there's the phenomenon of clustering, when people come for one service, but they can get a lot of similar or related services at the same time, would help to draw more businesses to our town. I think that's certainly true in the business district. So I think, to my mind, it would be, yes, we certainly want to serve the businesses that exist, but I think bolstering those businesses by talking about other anchors would be helpful.
That'd be great. And so in addition to that, can we also bring in, I know we have a lot of commercial real estate folks in this room, but just like folks to talk about how they're positioning and marketing, or what they're hearing about areas in that town. So per your point of maybe who's not here, but who could be here, like, especially if you're looking at parking and saying, hey, downtown Needham, like, we want to bring in this business, but maybe they say, hey, we actually need this many parking spots per our, per our plan, and you guys don't have that. Like, I think those type of things would be super interesting.
Yeah, and I think the zoning changes that you mentioned, what would make Needham attractive to the kinds of businesses that we're talking about. I mean, a zoning change is a long, big deal, but it's worth considering. I mean, we should have sort of all options on the table. But yes, Adam.
So a few things. One, we were JP. I don't know. I don't recall seeing it, but Amy, I think you started it, and JP was supposed to finish it, but I never saw it. The doing business in Needham guide, which would also be maybe printed out, but would also effectively exist like in a website as a significant marketing tool in addition to understanding some of the economic data to kind of promote and encourage, one of the things we had before was a subcommittee of this group that was working on these, the cluster-based economic development strategy to identify what types of businesses we want to attract. And having those tools, I think, would be particularly relevant to what you're talking about, Heidi. And then just also very quickly, so you and the CEA are aware, the planning board, I'm leading an initiative in the planning board to potentially rezone Great Plain Avenue from roughly Pickering to Linden Street. That would effectively promote more dense residential, which would hopefully encourage mixed use development along that corridor. And then also, the mixed use 128 Highland Avenue, 128 commercial district, which is effectively the area from Highland Avenue to Central Avenue, from the river to the highway. We're also going to start looking at the zoning, and I raise this because it would be really helpful to have the CEA, participate and provide some comments and insight to the planning board, because that might inform some of the zoning, that could affect real change and be an economic boon to the town in both areas.
Thank you. And one of the things that we do have on tap, so I think all of these ideas are great, and I would love to get experts in to talk with us about these ideas. The first one that we have planned is Dave Davison, who'll be coming in to talk with us. I think, when we talk about potentially recruiting businesses and so on, I just want to make sure that we all have a baseline understanding of municipal finance and how all of this activity influences the town's budget and our sources of income, and how all of that works together. So he's going to come in and give us sort of a primer, just to make sure we're good. And then all of these questions, I think we could address to him and have him sort of help us understand how this all integrates. But I also think, catching up on what the planning board is planning and working on is a great thing. And we talked about having Lee Newman potentially come once a half or once a quarter to give us a little update on what developments are actually moving through the planning board in town and the permitting process. The doing business in Needham guide that you mentioned was something that this group had worked on with JP briefly, mainly editing it down. It's not a marketing tool. It's more of a how-to for a local business to navigate the process. But I do think that a marketing tool or some, assessment that we could turn into a marketing tool would be really valuable. But I think static stuff on a website, while useful if people are looking for us, is maybe not as impactful as us identifying things that we want and going out and looking for it. We talked with Lee a couple of meetings ago about the potential for this group to take an active role in helping to recruit businesses, types of businesses to town. And I'd like to explore that as well, because I think it could have a big impact.
So I shared with Heidi, this was in one of the newsletters that come out of the chamber. There was a link to Why Massachusetts. And so if somebody's trying to come to Massachusetts, there's a link where innovation meets opportunity. And it's absolutely a marketing tool for recruitment. This would be awesome to have on a Needham website, say why Needham, and list all the wonderful resources that we have. So we could take what was in process and that was a whittling down. It was very administrative, kind of make it into more of a marketing. And I do feel like it has to be online. It can't be like a printed, maybe.
Yeah, of course.
Agree.
It should be a dynamic online tool.
We could produce like a 2.5 minute video, that shows the trends in population, how great the schools are, types of businesses here and so on, because all of those are helpful for businesses citing, where they want their business, where they want to place their business.
Okay, we're 1 minute out, so. Jake,
Oh, yeah,
okay?
so, I agree with all that information for recruiting. I think just what Adam was mentioning before about having like the ideal business mix or like maybe like what this mix should be or what we're looking for could also be useful input for this as we think through and look at these different areas. You probably have a better top-down view of like what's in town slash what we're like, what are we missing here that other towns have that would be a great anchor for.
Right, or a
different
complement to our
areas.
existing businesses.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more last question? I don't know if this is part of this committee, but you know, the hospital has 200 people that come in every day and I don't know what the economic impact of the hospital is on the, I don't know if those people are going out for lunch or whether they're just coming and going and not doing anything. Does this committee or could this committee work with the hospital? Maybe you give a 10% discount. How do you get those people that work at the hospital out to the various restaurants and such during lunch?
Well, I
Has
think
anyone ever done
could
that?
apply to other businesses as well. I mean, it's
Oh,
a
anything.
good,
Toy
I don't know.
store,
Yeah.
CVS, whatever, but do we know if anyone ever tracked? I don't know if I see these, do you see people with medical stuff walking around town?
I imagine we could get that information from Placer.
Yeah.
Has anyone ever tried to work with the hospital, say, do we give them a discount? I mean, could you give them whatever, how do you get them out in the
We can,
community? at
yeah, I mean, I
lunchtime?
think we can look at that
Yeah.
and as part of the Chestnut Street group, we could talk
Yeah,
about it, but I
or
think it
downtown.
applies out everywhere, particularly in the business park. We've got lots of employees there. Where are they going?
We used to run a bus to the downtown and that was sort of short-lived.
Yeah.
But to your point, I think they have a cafe. I'm sure Children's will have a cafe and oftentimes they subsidize them to make it actually
Right,
beneficial.
so
So
maybe like a toy store, or can they get their little thing? I don't know if they're walking around their lunch, or they're just staying in the hospital, I don't even know.
All right.
Yeah.
We gotta be mindful of time here, so I would welcome a motion to adjourn, and we're gonna be sending out some information post meeting to help us prioritize.
So moved.
Artwork instead of talking about artwork.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Do we have a second? Okay, so we gotta do a roll call. So Adam, you're the only one left online. You want to adjourn?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
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 yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned, everyone.
So you can.